What was at the basis of your...
My Zen, in other words, I would be teaching something written by one of the American authors, like Hawthorne and The Bet, which is a great story. And then I would teach, look at the lesson he's just learning. Now let's take a look at the lesson and let's take it apart to see what it's really made of. And so that's what I used to do. And all day long, I was just hitting the ball on the nose all day long.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So you're overlapping concepts of Zen?
I was looking into the heart of these messages and showing what the foundation, the very, very living dynamic is, where it comes from. And I was doing Zen, and Roland said, he wrote to me the next day. He wrote a long email to me, Gmail, and because I had given Jane my Gmail, and she and I went back and forth. I mean, she's complimenting the hell out of me. At one point I said, "You're making me blush." Okay? And then I complimented her on her syntax, the flowing syntax. I mean, it's like a love fest. Don't get too close to it, because you're gonna see the real me. And that's what I would tell them. See, but they like that. You know, don't put me on a pedestal. You would just, all you needed to be was to be let loose, I said. And she liked that.
I suppose that's a good kicking off point for today's vlog. How can one
I didn't know.
How can one
bragging
identify when they're idealizing someone else? What is the detriment to idealizing someone else?
Well, first of all, it's going to come to an end, and you're going to tear the person. If you're the type to idealize somebody, it means you're looking for a big mommy or big daddy to save you and to guide you and pick you up and carry you across the threshold into happiness and liberation. Okay? I'm certainly not that. I mean, it sounds like sometimes you know more than they do. You open doors for them and they think you've got all the answers. A really honest person, I like to think that I am, will tell you, you know, I have terrible flaws. I have my own problems. I don't solve anything. I can just look at it. I can put it under. I have an X-ray machine. It's as simple as that. I have an X-ray machine. I'm a technician. The real answer is in your own living. Your own moment-to-moment sentient existence, and what that feels like from the hedonic level, meaning the feeling level. Every emotion has a hedonic tone associated with it. Purple-faced fury, gutted up, will be obviously physical.
Right.
You burst a blood vessel if you're weak in that area, right? And then, but every emotion, if you make a list of all the emotion, you will find a neurophysiological correlate. It's going on in the brain, in other words, and that means you're going to feel it through this soul that you are. This soul is here. It's not floating above the ceiling. That's for the schizoids, okay, and the schizophrenics. And the people who like to believe that somehow all that you are as a personality is going to survive somehow when your brain deteriorates. You can see it disappear in the lives of Alzheimer's patients, right? They are not the same being. They don't have memories anymore. Right. What happens to you when the whole brain comes to a screeching halt and it turns to dust? Everybody's brain turns to dust. What then? So what's left? So I look at what's left and I'm very happy about what I find. But that's because of my own experiences. What I find and what I found, and I've said this before, I found there to be a consciousness that potentially can exist without an object.
And it doesn't require some other being to complete it. It doesn't require someone to explain it to you. It doesn't require someone to enhance it in any way or make it any better. It's just there.
I agree with you. What I would do if I could claim anything, and I really don't claim anything, I could be a facilitator for getting people to value it. Because you get to a certain point. I'm 80. Some of the people that I'm in contact with now, these brilliant students that I've had in the past, I mean really brilliant, they are old too. They're closing in on 70, 65, 68. That's how old they are. And they have to start to feel something about the end coming.
Right.
I think that if you don't at least contemplate it in a subtle way, you're just living in denial.
Right.
You're trapped in this world. You think this world is going to continue and continue. No, the biggest day of your life is going to come. I consider it the biggest, because wow, you're talking about a big adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Either you step out into the void and you disappear like so much dust in the wind, or somehow you become something more fundamental than just this, what I call false personality, the one that's based upon memories.
The self-idealized version of you, the momentary snapshot that you have in your mind of your perfect memories.
It not only that, no, the basic thought of self. Selfhood itself at the foundation is going to be just dissolved. And so what's left? Because you're basically thinking of yourself as some kind of substance in the world.
Right.
And you can disappear as a substance, but you can still be the life that you are.
Right.
You know what I'm implying. I'm implying that there is life, just as your Wim Hof said. He said it to me, it was a bit simplified. He said that consciousness invades the body. No, the body arises out of consciousness, but the consciousness is unmanifest. But when it arises, it's like a flame. Here comes the flame, here's the fire, and here's the flame. It's made out of the same stuff, only now it's somehow in a strange particularization. It's in a relationship with other flames in which it feels itself to be separate.
Right.
Strange, right? And it's going to last a while, then it's going to dissolve and go back where there is no separation, because all the flames go back to the source. Well, we don't know that about us. We don't live that way. I lament this, and yet people are going to laugh at me. I look at the world and all of its dramas, and I see nothing but ego. It's always an ego drama. I mean, it's like selfishness institutionalized beyond question. So that if you question it, you're somehow soft-headed. Okay, you're really soft-headed, and you're idealistic, and you want to believe in Santa Claus and the transcendence of the soul. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about reducing this world that is nothing but transience. It's constantly changing. This dream, reducing it back into the source, because it's going to happen, and it's going to happen to everybody individually, and it's going to happen to the whole universe after a number of billions of years. And we could talk about universes and all that. We can get into that and step into even a higher plane, but that's all conjecture. But you can make cases for it, because I look at consciousness as the same as I look at empty space. There's empty space, there are things in empty space, so it's not empty anymore. There are things, moons, suns, butterflies, black holes, enormities. But there is one thing they all have in common. When they disappear, they will all be back to empty space. Are you capable of doing that? Are you capable of, like St. Paul said, those who will give up their souls will save their souls. I don't understand about saving the soul, but maybe you just don't go through agony and you stay awake. Maybe there's the key. See, I personally think that if you go back to the void, that's exactly what Buddha was trying to do. And what he did, apparently, found it in life. The pure light of the void. People don't understand that at all. I've mentioned it, and then after a couple of years of my saying it, I remember one guy saying, "What is the void?" Well, you can't describe it. If you've not touched it, or it has not touched you, it's just a concept which gets reduced to the same status as almost any other concept.
Right.
It is not a concept. And if you experience it in any way, it can scare the hell out of you.
It would seem, I have a question to add to this afterwards, but it would seem that existing in spaceless awareness would be no different and yet entirely different as existing right now. It would be no different in that nothing changes except perception of what is occurring, maybe.
Again, I had the belief system that Nisargadatta Maharaj was the cat's ass. I think he was it. I think when he talked, he was living as the void.
We should bring that book to this next time. Just read a little piece of it. Just
you
a piece.
Want to do that to these people?
Just a piece.
But that will be down to three readers.
3 viewers.
3 viewers.
Right.
I mean, I guess Krishnamurti too was there. I'm not sure. It's how do you know? I mean,
right.
I've heard an old friend up in Massachusetts claim that he was a self-realized being. What does that mean? There's ego coming out of his ears every moment, even to the point of being nasty and hurtful. Competitive with people, guys that are going to somehow usurp his position as the top dog. That's his thing, and he's still living that, and it's the same pattern. He would, if he even acknowledged that, he would probably justify it as just, well, I see all that. I am from a different place. Come on, it doesn't change your behavior. When Buddha would arise at the head of a village, like a trail leading into the village, he would leave his sangha, 3,000, 5,000 people out there in the woods, I guess, because they couldn't go in the village. But he would arrive and he would announce himself to the elders. And it's my favorite saying. He would say, I am a perfectly harmless being. It's much like what the Dalai Lama said when he entered India to get away from the Chinese communists. 1949. I am nothing but a humble monk, he said. I am harmless. That's the key, though. I think that if you realize not the who you are, because you're not a who. Nisargadatta said that. The Maharaj said that. You're not a person. People are, that's horrible. That's how I would bring that in front of the Democrats. We are all about the person. It's all about, and then the Republicans are all about the separative person. The Democrats claim that they can make it all one through laws. They can convert you into being a social being through laws. We know how successful that is. And the other guys, on the other hand, they can turn this into a fascist state. Fascist or communist, they both meet around the back. They're the same. Which means that everybody is miserable and only a handful of people run things. And there's always one person at the very top. And because they're all a bunch of ants with egos, they're trying to scramble to the top. So it's like the whole world is internecine. So I think that if one is truly enlightened, that he or she realizes that oneself is a consciousness that cannot be classified permanently as anything. It can exist throughout everything. I see it in this little being. She's conscious. What? She's sentient. She's very sentient. She jumps around. Every little thing scares her. So she's awake to something. She doesn't have the intellect that you have. She has a better intellect than I have. She makes me do everything for her.
Right.
And I thank her for it at the same time.
Right.
But she doesn't have to write or anything like that, but she is just as alive. And in many ways, she's a lot more physically alive than many humans. Lots of schizoids walking around dead to their bodies.
I want to call something into question that I'm sure a lot of people that go through the motion of coming to understand this intellectually may come to. The utility of existentialism. Now, I know that that betrays the entirety of what it is by even asking what is the utility of existing itself.
That's okay, though.
Right? And so I know a lot of people will do that, though. They'll say, what's the purpose in pondering one's own existence? Well, you have no disconnect from it as it is, so you don't get to not do that because you're just constantly existing anyway. And so you're still going to find yourself living at some point in time. And so it's just something that's occurring. But I think maybe just showing that it's not going to sway your decisions for any destructive purpose in your own life. You're still inclined to do whatever it is you're inclined to do. The only thing now is that you become more aware of what you are doing. You as a being, not you as a person per se, but like you're just turning the lights on, I guess. Would that be
what the notable existentialist would say would probably dovetail into how Sartre put it. The existential agenda is an active one because basically it's trying to get people to live authentically.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key, and that's how I put it too.
Mm-hmm.
Way better than to be authentic than not to be authentic. Stop, no guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
You are just really alone, etc., etc. And that's why a lot of people don't like existentialism. They are afraid of it because it basically says stop bullshitting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And take a look at all the things that make up the human being. And they anticipated, because there's so many of them, they anticipated people like Freud. Kierkegaard anticipated Freud. He was teaching psychoanalysis through his amazing articulation of the language and the expressing the deepest feelings of living in this world. He died very young. He was not even 42 when he died. Looked like he was 85. Obviously, the physiological problems there, but it had a certain effect on his relationships, and especially with Regina Olsen, a woman he loved, but he couldn't do anything but hurt her and push her away and gravitate. He was like an arrested adolescent, like a 13, 14-year-old who doesn't know what he's doing. He's back and forth, and he kills himself by this kind of sad commentary on the world and his own analysis of his own psyche. And it's so rich because he's very brilliant that it actually presaged, it predated Freudian psychoanalysis, not necessarily using all the same terms and all that, but the ideas were there. And it's all basically just people being as honest as they possibly can when they write. There are a whole bunch of them. They're all different. They were all at war. If anybody wants to look at the existentialist comics, they're on YouTube. I've looked them up. I've seen many of them. They're so cute. They're funny as hell, but they're actually done very well because they'll put a whole bunch of people together, all these philosophers from different periods, and they'll even put a Camus in there who's like a real rough kind of existentialist, a slap your face existentialist, who was just having a good time and not with guilt or remorse, but he was gross compared to the other ones. But they all have this thing in common where they see the human being as alone and thrown in the world and lost, and then creating a world to make themselves feel at home and not lost. But the real truth of it is found in the deep angst of that, because deep down inside everybody knows that this is all just a dream, all being created, and they can't be sure of anything. They're not even in control of this thing. This thing goes really bad every once in a while for people, and some of them don't survive, right? So this is a very scary place, and the only call is to somehow make your way through as you're scared and do various things with it. Existentialist comics will give you all kinds of excellent, fun insights into that kind of thing. I would strongly suggest it for people. They're quite funny if you're intellectual enough to know about it. They are quite funny. Luckily, I've studied a lot of them, and so what they say is very familiar, and I can see them banging back and forth, the hilarity of it. Because the intellectual world is basically the one I've described in the past of doing philosophy. The kingship and pirate ship are lashed together after they bombarded each other, and now the soldiers and the pirates and the sailors are all cutting at each other with cutlasses. That's philosophical convention. Only it doesn't look like it because they're all so polite and they use such beautiful, grandiose language, but they're trying to kill each other. As competitive as anybody in the world. My thought is better than your thought.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I've been in that world for over 60 hours of graduate studies in philosophy. So I know that world quite well. And it's fun if you realize what it is. You go there for fun.
Right. Right.
And it can be nice. It's a nice thing to do. You don't have to even be in conflict.
Right.
Yeah, if you just ask questions and you propose an idea and you leave it out, and if somebody jumps all over it, so what? It's not you, it's not your body.
Right.
Oh, you thought of it, therefore you're stupid. There's that kind of thing that goes on. It's really sad for some people. Unfortunately, it's much more true of the kind of person you wanted to discuss today before we opened this up, the narcissist.
Yeah.
And how to be...
The answer with a capital A.
Oh my God.
To all problems.
Me? I love it.
The A, the alpha, the asshole. They're all the same thing, right?
What do you want to do with your narcissistic friend? I mean, really, what do you want to do with him?
So I guess again that moving from existentialism to existentialism and still existing on this planet, feet on the ground, head in the cloud type of thing. One finds themselves inclined in one way or another, and to cause an interruption in that is to still manifest self. It should flow, right? And so if someone were to find themselves at odds with their desire to do something, even if it's a self-fulfilling thing, like becoming a champion or something like that, one should still do what they're inclined to do, provided what sort of restrictions, and I guess that would be bringing up some moral restrictions, right? Some ethical and moral restrictions, right? And so if one were to interact with other people, if they're totally in alignment with themselves and their emotions and their full being, they would have no inclination to harm anything else. Is that correct? Like you were saying about...
I've always thought that. I've always thought that when you're really... You know yourself in the deepest sense without intellectualizing about it, but you understand the most fundamental thing about yourself. I think you realize that you are that simple... It's like childlike consciousness. And that you are capable of producing these very highly developed thoughts, despite the fact that you're living as that child. And what do I mean when I talk about the child? I'm not talking about somebody in a condition of, pardon the word, but retardation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about simplification. And if you look closely, every child wants what? What does this little child want? She wants love and affection, right? And the only time she ever gets aggressive is when she's afraid. But she's fine with you and me and a few other people. Right. And so she's about as lovable as she can be. And look at the experience of this that she has. She's simply relaxed and she feels all the good things, the safety and all that. And that's what we want too. Right. And if she had an intellect, under these conditions, she could be flowing ideas that would make St. Thomas look like a fifth grader. Because from that condition of peacefulness comes, like all the doorways to your soul are open. You are the soul, And the soul, by its nature, has all kinds of wonderful ideas, like the fact that it's not separate from all these other souls as we think. And it will automatically recognize the truth of, like, for instance, what the subatomic physicists would tell us about this just being a giant field of energy. And then you and I are just, you're a vortex, I'm a vortex.
Right.
We are vortices of energy, temporary, but it all goes back to this.
Right. Right. So, you know, a lot of people, I think, will find themselves in conflict in one way or another in life. I think, you know, maybe here or there, once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while, like every take a drive.
Right.
Go driving in the city or drive on the highway.
Particularly in Rhode Island.
Yeah, in Rhode Island. Northeastern drivers are, yeah, they actually sent them here from hell.
Right. Yeah. They're the ones that wanted to go back to hell.
They want to go back to hell.
Right. So what is one to do when you know, when they find themselves at odds? You know, someone's attempting to do their best to be in alignment with themselves and their emotions, and then suddenly they just get, you know, hit with a gust of
so
negativity.
What to do? You want me to answer this?
Sure.
Okay. Too bad the thing went dead for a while. I forgot my answer. I did answer it though, didn't I?
Yeah, it was a great answer.
Perfect answer.
It was perfect.
Too bad it never got recorded. Like I said, don't make me your teacher,
Right.
because if you do, you'll destroy me and you'll destroy yourself as well. I quote Krishnamurti all the time. I am not a wise man. I'm just somebody who knows how to open doors that say, "Do not enter."
Right.
You can lose your sense of everyday self, but you're still going to live your everyday self. You know what I mean? Unless you're just trapped in your intellect and you have a mind-body split that's at least neurotic as hell, but maybe even psychotic. Unless you're in that condition, you're going to continue to take your steps and trust the floor.
Right.
You know, your life is going to be filled with all kinds of functioning assumptions.
Right.
Right? So, the best, I don't know, I'm not going to pretend to be a mystic. I know I've had some extraordinary ventures into states of consciousness that were gifts, in my opinion. But that doesn't make me enlightened, because, look, here's the key. Buddha was looking for what? What did Buddha want to do?
End suffering.
End suffering. I still suffer. And okay, is it just end suffering of relationships? Well, maybe that's where the cure comes in. Because the Buddha died of poison mushrooms. I bet he suffered. I bet he suffered the pain. But then, I think possibly, he was at a place where there was no Buddha. There was just this body, but there was no, it's beyond, that's the part that's beyond suffering. There's pain, but there's no suffering. Because there's nobody to suffer. That's the key. Now, we don't understand that. If you think you understand that, you're either a mystic or you're totally dissociated, right? You're a complete mad psychotic person.
Both.
And now we got those poor three people
Yep.
watching it.
Are you live?
Oh, what's that? Well, that was a good one.
Was that any good?
Leave us some questions in the comments.